if you ever photographed outdoors, you can understand how challenging lighting conditions sometimes can be. Maybe it's a gear limitations, or maybe you have skill limitations. Well, in this video, I'm going to walk you through my photo shoot that recently took place at the Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Beautiful beaches out there. So I'm going to take you on the walk, but before that, I'm going to give you a quick rundown of what's important for the photo shoot right after this. Now, let's talk a little bit about gear. Some people say that gear is not important, and to an extent it's probably true, but then others also say that gear is important, so people go back and forth. Now, when you shoot at the beach, the nice thing about shooting at the beach is that you can really use many different lenses for that, many different focal length. So for example, you can go with 25 millimeter, 24 millimeter, you can go with 35 millimeters, you can even shoot with 70 to 200, whichever the case is, because you can easily zoom in and out using your feet. Now, I personally find the most optimum focal length to shoot at the beach is anywhere from 50 to 85, and I prefer to use primes because sometimes you can get this nice shallow depth of field, and then just makes photos a little bit more professional and better looking. So in any case, in my specific walk that I'm going to walk you through right now is I use a 50 millimeter because I think it's perfect. It's, you can do up close shots, but you can also step back a little bit if you need to, and you can fit group shots and you can do individual photos. So in my photo shoot, I had a family that I was shooting with, that we traveled with to Myrtle Beach. So now let me give you tip number one: lighting. Lighting at the beach sometimes can be very challenging. For that reason, I really want to encourage you, shoot at the golden hour. So basically either early in the morning, or when the sun is just coming up, or late at night when the sun is setting, because at that point you will have a really beautiful light on the faces, people not squinting as much. Or another time to shoot is during the overcast time. Now, this was actually my case. In fact, when I was shooting, I had a lot of sun coming in. So there are times when I had to wait for the clouds to come in to be able to kind of give this nice even lighting. So in the morning hours, late hours, or during the overcast. Second one is location. Now, the great thing about shooting at the beach is there are really no bad places, because if you were to take a couple, a family, anywhere, anyone to and ask them where would they prefer to shoot, whether it will be at the playground or that will be at the beach, I think most people vote for the beach because there's really no bad places, unless the beach is very crowded and there's too many people out there. Yeah, that can get very challenging, but the nice thing about shooting at the beach, locations, anywhere you turn, it's going to be great. So just keep that in mind. And the third point that I guys want to give you is looks. So, right, you following? I got 3 L's. You have lighting, location, and looks. So the looks one is kind of more of expressions. What you're really trying to shoot for is you're shooting for impressions, not expressions, because that's where you're going to get the most genuine photographs that you will see. And in my a few photos that I'm going to show you in a bit, you'll be able to see the difference between when you're shooting for kind of stage photo versus when you're shooting for someone who is really being expressive in who they are and what they do, and almost like a kind of candid shot. So because think for a moment, if you were to be walking by 2 photos and one of them that looks like more staged and the other one looks like more people just being themselves, they are smiling, they are laughing, they're being natural, the one that you're going to probably pay attention to is the one that your human eye is going to draw to. It's the one that actually tells you a story. Because as photographers, we want to be able to tell the story with a single photograph. You know, yes, I know there's a time and place when you want to shoot, and everybody's looking at the camera, and the dog, and the grandmother, and the toddler, and kind of this perfect looking family. But a lot of cases, you know, if you walk through my house, you'll find that most of the photographs that I printed are the ones that have this kind of genuine expression. They're not staged, and they're the ones that I actually look at and kind of trigger some memory about that specific time. So my tip here is shoot for expressions, not impressions. Okay, so now without further ado, let's dive into some of those photos, and I'll walk you through what I have. All right, so here's the first photo. This is actually my daughter, and again, some of the things that I was talking to you earlier, lighting, okay? So let's look at the lighting that I was talking about. So the sun was really coming from kind of this angle back here, and but I was really waited when the blanket of clouds can come through. And as you can see, this is all ocean back here. Location, again, location on the beach is very easy to find a good place to shoot. And the second one is just her smile, you know, her face, how she wasn't looking at the camera, she was looking somewhere off to the side. And so that's kind of our shots that you're looking for. Let's look at another one. All right, so this is me and my wife. Actually, I gave a camera to a friend of mine who took a shot. As you can see, this is sort of, you know, a hybrid photo, I would say. You know, my wife and I were looking rather in the camera, and it's fine, you know. But my kids are looking someplace else, right? They're kind of trying to make faces, and I know a lot of kids do that. And it's okay photo. It's not something necessarily that I would put, you know, print it and put it on the wall, but it's just an example of a photograph when you're shooting, and it's just not perfectly composed. But again, the lighting is fine coming in from the side. The sun actually was behind the clouds coming from the side. And as you can see all the way back here, beach. I mean, it's a nice setting, and again, there's no bad place, I feel like, at the beach. All right, let's look at another one. So this is the one, an example of expression, really. As you can see, my family is, you know, very silly, my kids, and we just kind of decided to make a silly photo. And as you look at my son, for example, you know, he's showing his tongue out, my son, my other son, my daughter, even my wife was part of the game, and look at me, you know, I wasn't. So that's the photo that it was almost well composed, but there was something missing. You know, again, as photographers, we all make mistakes, and we all gonna have those things where it's like, just a little bit, you know, it would have been a good photo. So in this case, and what I even like about this one is that it's not like, you know, perfectly lined up photo. As you can see, my daughter's legs are pointing out, and it kind of draws your eye to that for a moment. You know, you're not really expecting something like this. Okay, so that's a example of not a perfect photograph. Okay, so this one is a little bit better. And what I want to actually point out here is, and there will be coming in several photos, expressions are usually well shown when there's a connection between the subject or people who you're photographing. Now, in this case is, you will see, and I always try to encourage, and I try to do myself, is you want to provide a connection. When you see hands are connected to another person, it's almost like it ties image together. So here is, you know, me holding my wife, and it really helps the photo to come together, like to a visual eye when you're looking at it, when it's not perfectly staged. This is what you're going for, connection between hands. So here's another photo. Again, this is actually a very good example of what I was talking about when it comes to lighting. As you can see, initially there was just so much sun, and I was waiting for this blanket of clouds to come through. And as you can see here, all the blanket of clouds. Actually, the sun is coming, you know, right behind there from that side, but because it was covered by the clouds, it's actually helped the photo to be a lot more natural, naturally lit. You don't have hard shadows. And in this case is depth of field, and again, back to location, right? As you can see how much depth of field that you have. You know, it doesn't really matter sometimes with, in these cases, whether it's, you know, f1.8 or f2.8, but it gives you a very good perspective. And my wife is standing off to the side, so it gives this sort of a, you know, separation between the background and the foreground. Again, try to shoot for some kind of a depth as well. Let's look at another one. So now this is an example of simply expression. You know, a lot of times when I try to photograph my kids and I try to have them stage, it just never works very well. They have very little patience. So what I try to do is I try to capture them in the moments when they expect the least. But as a photographer, you want to be kind of expecting those moments. As you can see, his expression, I mean, is just precious. He was playing with water, and that's kind of the photograph that, honestly, guys, I would print and put it on the wall, rather than the ones that I showed you earlier, such as a photograph like this, because it's just, you know, it just doesn't give you the same sense of the moment that you were in. Okay, so let's go back to where I was earlier. All right, so this is a photograph of, you know, whenever you taking pictures of two people. Actually, a friend of mine took a photo of me here, and I was just sort of, you know, being me with my wife. You know, I wasn't necessarily trying to stage myself. And again, that's kind of photo that when I look 20 years later will likely generate some sort of, you know, kind of a warm feeling, because that's what the photographs are about. You want to capture the moment. You want to communicate 20 years later what the moment was like. Okay. Here's another example. I am actually very insecure about one feature of my body, and that's my nose. So whenever you're photographing people, try not to photograph them showing their profile, because it's not very appealing to a photograph. Now, I'm just self-conscious of those things, and you might be self-conscious of your smile or maybe of your hair or something. For me, it's my nose. I do have a longer nose, but it is what it is. But the point here is, you know, the lighting was great. The scenery back behind was great. The expressions, again, were very natural. We weren't staging. Just a friend of mine took a photo of me and my wife when I was holding my wife. So again, just whenever there's a connection, people holding together, there's a hand connection, it really ties the entire photograph together. That's another one of my son. Again, simply expression. Shoot to express, not to impress. I really keep reminding myself of this all the time. As you can see, just, you know, my son's smile. I mean, again, that's kind of the photograph that I'll be looking to print. You have a very beautiful lighting coming in. Sun was covered with clouds, and, you know, that kind of communicates the moment back again. Now, this is a photo shoot that I did with a friend of mine, actually, who traveled with us to Myrtle Beach. And so what I want to point out here specifically, you know, I don't want to spend too much on every photo, but connection. What you see here, if all of them had their hands down, it would be very, I would say, boring photograph. But because of all of them holding each other, there's some sort of a connection between them, it's kind of really, it ties photograph together, and that's kind of photograph that I'll be like, oh yeah, I can print. I can see this one printing, because, you know, it can communicates the message. It's great for, you know, cards or something like that. So try it whenever you're photographing somebody, have that connection between them, and the way to create that is just be able to put your hand on someone else's shoulder, and that really ties the photograph right there. So here's another one, kind of a combination of both expression as well as hands, okay? So it creates a connection. Good lighting coming from the side. You know, you got scenery, you got ocean in the back here, and everybody's smiling. So, you know, try to go for something like this where there's an expression in the photograph. When you're photographing at the beach, and I know I'm repeating myself, but there's no bad location at the beach. You know, any way you turn, it's going to be great. So here's another one. Again, as you can see, you know, kids holding parents, you know, putting their hand on their elbow or something like that. That ties the photograph together like this. So here's another one. This was sort of, you know, while they were talking, they were interacting. I'm trying to sometimes go for those natural shots because it allows to create a portfolio of and create a memory for them, because again, these are the photos that you would want to be printing, because 20 years from now, 10 years from now, 15, maybe 30 years from now, even their kids, they will be able to understand what the moment was like, how it felt in the moment, rather than a photograph maybe like this, right? So just keep that in mind. Here's another one. Yes, this one was a little bit staged, but again, I have them close their eyes because that creates a sense of intimacy and kind of, again, connection. People like warm photographs. They like looking at things like this. And by the way, one thing I want to quickly mention is whenever somebody, looking to get dressed for a certain attire, I didn't tell them, but they were wearing blue and white. Blue and white always looks great at the beach. You cannot go wrong with blue and white. And I'm actually glad they were wearing this one, and that helped me to use it for my little lesson here. Expressions. I cannot overstate the importance of expression. Okay, mother and daughter just really, walking together on the beach, and that's the photograph I would want to print. That's the photograph I feel like, okay, it's worthwhile because it communicates the message. It communicates what was going on in the moment. And plus, as you can see, she was putting her hand on her shoulder, and again, that ties the image together. Going back to expressions. Okay, so this is one they were just, I was asking them to laugh a little bit. One of the things that I do is I ask people to, maybe it's more of like younger kids and the parents, try to tickle them. Parents, try to tickle your kids. It really, puts a smile on their faces, even though sometimes they're not looking exactly in the camera, but you're going for this natural look, natural feel. As you can see in this image, all right? So he is smiling, she is laughing, she is finding that this is funny, and he is looking at all of them and laughing at them. I mean, that's kind of, again, image that I would want to print, and I want to have it for my memory. Okay. Again, the whole of them are wearing white for the most part, and creates a great photograph. Lighting is excellent. You have a good background landscape. As you can see, there's a water in the back. So try to go for something like this. Another one, expressions. They were just simply walking and talking, and then they stopped and laughed, and I was able to capture this image. So as you can see, expressions communicate so much in a photograph. It will literally tells you what was going on in that moment. Here's a father and a daughter image. What I was trying to do with this one is I was trying to showcase a little bit of a depth of field. Okay, as you can see, sort of the here. So here's the beach area, and here's the ocean back here, and you can see how much distance in between. And they were kind of close up, and sort of I was using this rule of thirds, where you want to place people, in a third part of the image back here, because I don't know, it's naturally your eyes try to go to that component of the image, and also using, sometimes when you use those general rules of photographs, a rule of thirds, it helps. Again, they're wearing white. It's great at the beach. You cannot go wrong. And so here's an image of his wife. I was simply, she was kind of staging here. But that nice thing about shooting with 50mm f1.8 is because you can step down, or you can step up to f1.8 and be able to capture this kind of like a, glowing look and feel, as opposed to with an image before. This is probably was shot most likely at about 2.2, 2.8, because I want to make sure that both of them were in focus. With a single individual, there's really no reason why you cannot shoot wide open, and especially if you have, with most mirrorless cameras, you have IAF, and that's fantastic. Both eyes are actually perfectly in focus, as you can see. So I really, try to use shallow depth of field for a single individuals if you can. And so here's another photo of just kind of more of a wider shot, but again, as you try to bring it closer, she is perfectly in focus. So, and that kind of wraps up my walkthrough, my Myrtle Beach photo shoot. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you learned something from it. And if you have any questions, please put down in the comments below. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already. Hit that notification bell. That will notify you of a new videos when those come up. And I will see you in the next video.